In the late 1700s, a former Navy navigator named William Morris set out on a daring voyage crossing the Antarctic ice walls, uncharted territory that no sailor had ever returned from. What he found there wasn't just a new world. It was the key to understanding humanity's forgotten past. William encountered advanced civilizations, uncovered ancient secrets, and learned of powers that have shaped our reality without us ever knowing. But to understand his incredible story, we must start from the beginning. As a Continental Navy man during the Revolutionary War, William had left behind his wife Lucy and the life they dreamed of building together. War, as always, tore through those dreams, replacing them with the pain of separation. One night after Saratoga's surrender, his ship was bound for Charleston under a full moon, the Atlantic stretching in ghostly silence. To calm the anxiety of war, the crew swapped stories over whiskey. Soon, talk drifted to Captain James Cook and his fixation with crossing the Antarctic Circle. The source of Cook's obsession was a mystery, and while William didn't give it much thought at first, he couldn't help but listen when his own Captain Butler spoke up. Butler's voice was calm but resolute. "There may be a passage somewhere in the polar circle," he said, "a gateway to lands beyond." His tone held no hint of jest. The cabin fell silent, every man waiting for the punchline that never came. Butler claimed he had high-level sources confirming that expeditions were being funded to break through the harsh southern climate to reach what lay beyond the ice. He himself had seen a map that marked coordinates for such a passage. The idea felt impossible, yet it left William haunted as he drifted into an uneasy sleep. Years later, with the war over, many Navy ships were dismantled or sold. William, now comfortably situated, decided to purchase one of them, a decision that drew plenty of laughter from his friends. But the memory of Butler's story lingered, sparking an unshakable urge to explore. Lucy was hesitant, but William was determined. By November, he had a crew ready, though most had turned down the offer with understandable reluctance. Only two of his friends from that fateful night were eager to join him. Convincing Butler himself was a different story. For weeks, William wrestled with how to approach him, knowing that Butler's experience and those coordinates were crucial. When he finally asked, Butler showed interest but declined. Then, on October 11th, Butler appeared at William's door, unannounced and holding maps William had never seen. With him was a man named Fint, and they both looked as if they had come from another world. "I'll join you," Butler said, "but understand this could be a one-way trip." William nodded. He realized then that this journey was no longer a distant fantasy. It was a professional mission, one that demanded everything he had. The adventure was about to begin. After setting November 14th as their departure date, William and his crew worked tirelessly, filled with a mix of anticipation and unease. Every detail was meticulously planned, and Butler's mysterious partner, Fint, had joined the team. But as the days crept closer, an ominous tension grew. They spoke of adventures, but no one knew that the journey would surpass any fiction they had imagined. 2 days before departure, William heard a sharp knock at his door. Fint stood there, accompanied by a stranger dressed in black, his expression severe, his voice edged with a strange accent. "This is urgent," he said. William hesitated, then allowed them inside. Fint opened a worn briefcase and pulled out an old manuscript, its pages brittle and lined with foreign script. In a low, solemn tone, he read aloud, "By demand, I subscribe in major importance, here by desire of our lords, that the doors of knowledge be closed to those who refused our path." William felt a chill settle over him. "This sounds like some sort of initiation rite," he muttered half to himself. "Exactly," Fint replied. "Those who do not pass the initiation are outcasts. We are outcasts." Frustrated, William demanded, "What does this mean?" What does it have to do with our trip? Fint's expression darkened. The manuscript belongs to the custodians, the sun gods, as they call themselves. They know about our journey thanks to Butler, and they aren't pleased. This decree states that no one is to leave these lands without their permission. The air in the room grew thick. William, already prepared for the natural dangers of the journey, now found himself confronting an invisible, powerful enemy. "Who are these custodians?" he pressed. Before Fint could answer, the stranger spoke. "They are not happy about your voyage," he said cryptically. "That's all you need to know." Fint urged him to cancel the trip, warning, "It's not worth risking your life." William, angered by their cryptic threats, ordered them to leave immediately. Yet as they left, a deep unease lingered. When William tried to reach Butler to make sense of the strange encounter, he received only silence. As his team gathered to discuss the unsettling developments, they realized that Butler had been missing for days. The situation grew dire. Without Butler, their plan seemed doomed. Walter, a fellow sailor, mentioned he'd heard vague stories about the custodians, but could offer nothing more. Reluctantly, they postponed the trip, their plans unraveling as Butler's absence stretched into weeks. November 14th arrived with no hope left. Then that morning there was a knock on William's door. To his astonishment, Butler stood there, his arms full of supplies, his expression untroubled. "It's time to leave, comrade," he said, as if nothing had happened. Stunned, William bombarded him with questions, recounting the strange visit from Fint and his warnings. Butler's expression grew cold. "It was necessary," he replied. "I had to disappear to secure this." He unfurled a large map, covering the table in William's living room. William's breath caught. On the map lay vast, uncharted lands beyond anything he'd ever known. "Do you know the custodians?" William asked. Butler nodded grimly. "The story we know isn't the whole truth," he said. "They're the ancient ones, builders of the pyramids, the so-called custodians. They have no desire to let us cross the South Pole." He explained that Fint had betrayed them, alerting the custodians of their journey. "If we don't leave today, we may never have the chance," Butler warned. With a surge of urgency, William gathered the crew. Once assembled, they departed from Charleston, heading southward into the unknown, each man silently aware that their lives, and the truth they sought, would never be the same. The plan was straightforward: reach the cold Antarctic waters in 140 days, stopping to restock along the way. But the mood on board was tense. Butler's mysterious disappearance before departure, and his talk of another race, left an unsettling question. What force had they challenged by embarking on this journey? Days passed smoothly, with the crew buoyed by good weather and plenty of supplies. They crossed the equator, the tropical heat almost stifling their focus on the icy lands ahead. At Butler's urging, they gathered additional provisions, knowing the journey might stretch longer than anticipated. The air grew heavier as they drew nearer to the unknown south. One clear night, with only the sound of waves for company, William stood on deck, thoughts drifting to the mysteries ahead and the familiar world left behind. Was it worth facing whatever unknown power lay ahead? Butler approached, interrupting his thoughts. "Getting cold, comrade." Butler's tone was cryptic. "You can't imagine what awaits you." "You've been there?" William pressed. "I have," Butler replied simply, his gaze fixed on the southern horizon. "I saw the passage myself." William's questions rose, but Butler held up a hand. "In time, you'll see it too," he said, "and you won't believe what's beyond it." Days turned into weeks, and as they reached the southern seas, the difference was stark. The water darkened, waves towering higher, shadows cast by icebergs looming like silent guardians. A storm lashed at them relentlessly, But Butler's calm held them steady, giving the crew a thin thread of confidence as the howling winds beat against their resolve. They sailed alongside a towering wall of ice, rising nearly 90 meters, its jagged edges casting an eerie, flickering glow of red and yellow from the sun's low rays, as if an unseen fire burned behind it. The crew named their ship The Secret, feeling that only such a name suited the silent, beautiful desolation that surrounded them. As they approached the icy mountain, strange warmth radiated from its melting slopes, causing the snow to cascade into the sea. The contrast of warmth against the bitter cold felt wrong, almost unnatural. Butler ordered them to stay close to the wall, intrigued by the heat radiating from such a cold, lifeless place. Then, without warning, Butler called William to the deck. "Look there," he said, his voice thick with something between awe and urgency. Ahead, a passage had opened in the ice, a narrow, mysterious path cutting between towering walls. The crew's excitement was electric as Butler steered them toward it, his movements precise, like a man who knew exactly what he was doing. They entered the passage, an invisible current seizing the ship and pulling it forward with a force that took their breath away. Fear held each man still as they brushed the icy walls, narrowly avoiding disaster. Minutes stretched into an eternity until suddenly calm fell. The storm had ceased. Though the cold still bit, it was now gentle, bearable. The passage widened, giving way to an open, untouched sea. Butler's voice broke the silence. "We made it!" he cried, his tone triumphant. The crew erupted in amazement, gazing out over waters they had never dreamed existed. As the ice walls faded into the distance and the waters lightened, Butler gathered the men. His face was serious. "What I'm about to share with you now isn't just about us," he began. "It's about humanity, its past and its true story, one that very few know." As the crew stood silent, waiting for Butler to speak, a colossal craft appeared on the horizon, heading straight for them. One of the men climbed up for a better view, then scrambled down in alarm. "They're coming toward us," he gasped. "It's gigantic." Butler, usually calm, looked uncharacteristically tense. "Hold steady," he ordered, though a hint of nerves crept into his voice. The craft drew closer, its dark, reddish surface glinting ominously under the cold light. William's heart raced. He had thought they were alone in these waters, but it seemed they were not. Suddenly, a deafening horn echoed across the sea, followed by a voice in perfect English. "Visitors from the walled lands, remain calm. Our men are coming aboard. We mean you no harm." William's mind raced. Who were these people? He braced himself as three figures in white suits, marked by blue emblems, boarded the ship. One of them, a tall man, shook Butler's hand, his expression respectful yet cautious. "What brings you across the wall?" the man asked, studying them. Butler replied smoothly, explaining how a current had brought them to this side of the Antarctic Circle. William watched the exchange with growing unease. He sensed a familiarity between Butler and their visitors, though he couldn't understand it. The man exchanged glances with his companions. "It's been a long time since anyone crossed the walls," he said, almost to himself. He handed Butler a map. "Follow this to reach safe lands." William spoke up, unable to hold back. "Safe lands? Are there unsafe ones?" The man behind him gave a grim smile. "The lands you came from are less secure." He looked at Butler. "Stay on course, and you'll reach the Republic." The men left as quickly as they'd arrived, leaving a silence heavy with unspoken threats. Butler rallied the stunned crew. "We need to follow their instructions," he urged. "We've crossed into dangerous waters. There are forces who would rather we didn't know what lies beyond the ice." They sailed on for days, tension thick in the air. Butler remained tight-lipped, dodging questions, though his tone grew grave as he reminded them of the powerful interests that opposed their journey. Stay alert, he warned. We're in a war zone, whether we see the enemy or not. After weeks of rough seas, the cold began to ease, replaced by a milder climate. Birds appeared, vegetation floated on the water, and a sense of discovery replaced their fear. On a dark night, lights appeared on the horizon, a sprawling city, illuminated and surreal. Docking at the port, they were greeted by uniformed officials who introduced the city as part of the ancestral republic. Butler spoke on behalf of the crew, but William's mind was spinning with questions. Before he could ask, one of the agents announced that the Republic's president wished to meet him immediately. William followed the agent through a brightly lit city, amazed at the technology and the silence. No horses, no carriages, only quiet, light-filled streets. They reached a large stone building marked Presidential Office, where a man introduced himself as President Fail. Mr. Morris, Fail began. I wish you'd arrived under better circumstances. He sighed. Your journey through the wall has complicated things. I'll be brief. We're in the midst of an ancient war, and your people are part of what we call the old humanity. William's confusion grew. Old humanity? He asked. Fail nodded gravely. There have been many resets. When those in power feel threatened, they aboot humanity, wiping out most of the population and leaving only the youngest to repopulate. Your crossing risks drawing their attention, exposing our lands and everything we've worked to protect. Stunned and reeling, William could barely comprehend what he'd heard. As he was escorted back to the ship, his mind spun with the weight of this revelation. Back on deck, he shared the president's words with the crew. They were just beginning to process it all when a sudden explosion shattered the night. The ground shook, and the city's alarms wailed as flames and chaos erupted around them. What happened was that the enemy had reached the ancestral republic. The chaos around William was overwhelming. In stunned silence, he took in the sight of the city under siege, people trapped under rubble, desperate cries mingling with the distant sounds of crossfire. Small silver spheres with red lights hovered above, observing the devastation, their purpose and allegiance unknown. We have to get to the presidential office, shouted a nearby voice over the din. William, barely able to process the destruction, forced himself to move, helping others along the way. A deep red sky loomed overhead, dark as if in eclipse, adding an eerie glow to the ruined cityscape. He looked up, struck by the strangeness of this sky. Who controls these spheres? He wondered. Once inside the presidential office, he realized he'd lost his team amid the chaos. His training in the Continental Navy kicked in, and he felt compelled to help defend the city. Wounded civilians crowded every corner, and the sight of their suffering fueled his resolve. Just then, he saw Butler and President Fail across the crowded hall. Relief washed over him, and he approached, saluting them. Fail's face was tense, his voice strained as he issued commands into a small communicator. We need support from the Anakim, a voice on the other end repeated. This was a planned attack. Butler's gaze was steady as he turned to William. They're calling the giant warriors of the south, he said. William's mind reeled, but Fail added with reverence, they're not only warriors, they're the ones who brought us here before the last reset. Fail abruptly excused himself, leaving William with Butler. Follow me, Butler ordered, guiding him through the crowded corridors. We need to rest and gather the team for our next destination. A question burned in William's mind. Where are we going? He asked. Butler's expression softened. It's time you knew the truth, he said. I belong to these lands, William. I carry the blood of the ancients. What you've seen here today, it's a continuation of a war that began long before us. We're going to the lands of the Anakim, the ones who helped cross the ice walls long ago. Without another word, Butler slipped away into the sea of agents. William, left in shock, lay down on the nearest cot, though sleep was impossible. The images of destruction haunted him, and a new understanding took hold. He had left behind a world shrouded in darkness, and now he was part of a fight for a humanity that had survived the unknown, a humanity whose story had never been told. After a fitful sleep filled with distant explosions and dark thoughts, William was jolted awake by Butler's voice. "Up, William, it's time to move." The captain's tone was firm, almost urgent. Groggy, William barely had time to grasp the gravity of their situation. An enemy was attacking, though he still barely understood who or why. The team regrouped, relieved to see each other alive. They moved quickly through the eerily empty corridors toward the city's evacuation point. One of the men whispered to William, "We saw massive trains and ships overhead, taking people away at incredible speeds." Butler urged them on. "We're boarding one of those ships in 12 minutes. Questions can wait until we reach safe lands." Dodging debris in the deserted streets, William glanced up at the sky. The small spheres were gone, replaced by massive blue triangles streaking across the heavens, darting like swift, silent birds. He couldn't look away, but Butler tugged him back. "Focus, William. Those iron blues are on our side. They're driving the enemy back." When they reached the launch site, agents directed them onto a silver platform that whisked them to a towering vessel. The view was surreal, flames and smoke on one side, a sprawling advanced city gleaming on the other. Butler glanced at the sky, murmuring, "Like a scene from the portraits of Nuremberg." They entered a large blue ship, its interior spacious and sleek. William took a seat beside Butler, who urged them to relax. As the vessel surged forward, one crew member fainted, revived moments later. William gripped his seat, the powerful, silent motion unsettling him, while Butler reassured him with a steady gaze. They traveled through tunnels that plunged them into darkness before emerging over lush fields and endless orchards surrounding the distant city of Renata. The land was beautiful, vibrant with life. Gazing out, William thought he glimpsed a glimpse of Eden, a stark contrast to the chaos behind them. Butler broke the silence, his tone grim. "They poison the air there, William. The custodian's goal is to shorten lifespans, ensuring generations die young and unquestioning." William stared at him, stunned. "You mean they're controlling us by weakening us?" Butler nodded. "Here, people live 3 times longer, but even here, the custodians have tried to infiltrate, attempting to shorten our lives to gain control. This is why we fight." The ship arrived at the capital called the Ark, or El Arca, with no delay. Stepping onto the platform, William felt overwhelmed by the sight. Towering structures of glass and steel, glowing softly under the most breathtaking sunset he'd ever seen. Flying transports glided silently overhead, and the air itself was calm. This city was a vision of what humanity could be, free of the custodian's shadow. Its sleek towers and busy streets were filled with people, all moving in effortless harmony. Butler led the team through the city, his pace brisk, never looking back. They struggled to keep up, entranced by the floating vehicles and glass spheres in the sky, each carrying passengers who drifted above with ease. Despite the distant war, the city's energy was calm, as if untouched by the chaos beyond its borders. William's mind was racing with questions. Who were the Anakim? And the strange language spoken here? Was it ancient, a remnant of another humanity? They reached a massive harbor, and Butler motioned them to wait as he spoke with the officers. The team exchanged uneasy glances, whispering about the strange new world they had stumbled into, and wondering if the custodian's wrath followed them here. After a moment, Butler returned. "We're taking that vessel," he said, pointing to a sleek ship docked nearby. "It's similar to the one that found us beyond the ice. First, we'll stop at my home island, then on to the Anakim lands." On board, William marveled at the advanced technology. The ship glided silently, and the water below was unusually calm. The skies, however, seemed different from home. The sun's light was sharper, and another bluish-black sphere hung in the sky, static yet distinct. They sailed at an extraordinary speed, arriving swiftly at Butler's Island. There, on the simple but beautiful shore, a young girl ran into Butler's arms, and a woman stood nearby, her smile soft and welcoming. "Welcome to my home, comrades," Butler said, introducing his family. They settled into nearby houses and for 2 nights enjoyed a rare calm, though William's mind remained restless. One evening, as they watched the sunset, William finally asked the question gnawing at him. Butler's gaze remained distant. "They've conditioned your minds, William," he said. "The custodians have created a world of constant mental noise, making humans dependent on fleeting thoughts and perceptions. They've cut you off from true human essence, distracting you with endless conflict and fear." William listened, struggling to process it. "Our history is hidden," Butler continued. "If people knew the truth, they wouldn't live bound by invisible chains, kept ignorant by those who wish to control them." William fell silent, absorbing the weight of Butler's words, his heart heavy with realization. That night the sky felt vast and endless, holding secrets he was only beginning to uncover. The next morning, under the strange sun, they set sail for the lands of the Anakim, ready to confront whatever lay ahead. The journey to the shifting islands of Thoth was marked by an unusual, unending twilight, with only a faint transition from day to night. A pale, full moon hung in the sky, casting a glow that barely faded as they sailed on. Iron blue ships occasionally streaked across the sky, silent watchers on their path. Arriving at the port of Thoth, William noted its military air. Larger ships bristling with strange weaponry lined the docks. As they disembarked, a tall man with a long red beard and a striking woman with golden hair greeted them. While not towering, they were still imposing, standing over 2 meters tall. The woman, who introduced herself as Shiki, spoke their language, though with a curious ancient inflection. The group followed Shiki into the heart of the village, filled with towering domes and statues of giants, all overlooking lush landscapes and shimmering waters. William's mind raced. Only weeks ago, such sights would have left him speechless. Yet here he stood among the giants, the mythical beings of Thoth. Butler shared stories of their hosts. The giants of Thoth carry the ancestral blood of humans and giants alike. They once united with our ancestors to resist the custodians, forming what history knows as the Great Tartary. It was a powerful alliance, one that changed the course of our lands. Shiki returned, carrying an enormous book, which she handed to William. He opened it to find maps and diagrams of lands beyond anything he'd imagined. "This will help you understand the history," she said gently, watching his reaction. His hands shook as he turned the pages, glimpsing the known lands alongside vast territories marked with unfamiliar names and mysteries yet unexplored. "How many lands are there?" he asked in awe. "At least 178 worlds," she replied, "and countless others remain undiscovered." Butler added, "This doesn't include the islands and lands beyond." They stopped at a page marked Anunnaki lands. Shiki's expression turned serious. "The Anunnaki have always been hostile to humans and are bound by an ancient treaty with the custodians," she explained. William's heart pounded as he absorbed this knowledge. Each revelation deepened his sense that he was on the edge of understanding the truth of human origins, of a world far greater than he could ever have imagined. The giants' history lay buried and forgotten, as hidden as the bones of their ancestors. Their legacy, suppressed by the custodians, was one of resistance, a memory erased to prevent humans from discovering that they could challenge their unseen rulers. William pondered this lost greatness as he drifted into a restless sleep under a strange sky, his mind overwhelmed by the revelations of the past days. Morning brought clear skies, and Shiki, who led the group to a quiet corner, eager to share more of the giant's history. She opened a massive book, pointing to an illustration. "The custodians and Anunnaki are colonizers, William. They operate by infiltrating worlds, circles as they call them, then exploiting them." Her voice dropped as she continued. "They've mapped the known worlds and formed the old treaty to divide these lands and ensure control." William's curiosity burned. "You mentioned domes. What exactly are they?" "Each world lies within its own dome," Shiki explained. "These are invisible barriers separating each system, much like a cell's membrane. The circles are interconnected by portals, though they're difficult to find. But the custodians have fixated on one land they've never breached, the celestial lands." "Why can't they enter it?" William asked, his voice barely a whisper. Shiki hesitated. "Their technology fails there. Every custodian and Anunnaki who entered was destroyed. Eventually, they discovered that the celestial lands aren't inhabited by physical beings, but by an energy, a force they call the Source." She paused, her gaze distant. "They believe this source is conscious, perceiving the custodian's threat and responding to protect its environment." William's heart raced. "And this source, what does it mean for us?" Shiki continued. "It's said the source created the 5 masters, who shaped humanity in lands like Asgard, Lemuria, and Atlantis, places deeply connected to the world beyond. This is why the custodians seek to control humans. If people knew their true origins, they'd find a strength the custodians couldn't contain." The history Shiki revealed left William in silent awe. The giants had watched humanity's plight, seeing how the custodians had hidden the truth of the source, the vital energy within each human, and manipulated entire civilizations to keep that knowledge buried. Shiki continued, her voice steady. "The custodians and the Anunnaki have long known of this source, and for centuries they tried to unlock it. When they discovered Asgard's mountains rich with gold, they invaded, hoping to exploit the people and resources, but they found something unexpected. No matter how they tried, they couldn't control the energy that returned to the celestial lands upon human death. Frustrated, they sought other ways, sacrificing countless lives in blood rituals, plagues, and wars. Yet their grip on this energy remained elusive." William listened, his thoughts swirling with each revelation. "So they used resets to weaken us, hoping to control humanity with disease, shortened lives, and lies." Shiki nodded. "Yes, each reset rewrote history until people forgot their own potential. To them, humanity is a tool, a means to mine resources and construct monuments to their dominance." She explained how the custodians and Anunnaki grew divided, each vying for control of the known lands and its vast gold. Giants and human allies seized this moment, launching resistance forces from the free islands and the edges of the ice walls, forming what came to be known as Great Tartary. In that era, giants mingled with humans, forming armies and developing technology based on free energy, Shiki said. Pyramids and symbols of custodian rule were toppled as Tartary thrived, a force the custodians couldn't control. When the custodians returned from war, they found their former colony in chaos. A rebellion had sparked, with giants and humans fighting together against years of oppression. Over the years, giant humans had developed advanced defense technology, some derived from stolen custodian knowledge, transforming into a force the custodians never anticipated. They considered another reset to restore control, but their pyramids, once symbols of power, lay in ruins. Reluctantly, the custodians sought an alliance with the Anunnaki, trading gold and secrets to regain dominance. In their absence, however, they left the Greys, a race from Zeta Reticuli, as overseers. But the Greys, disgruntled and dismissive, underestimated humanity's resolve and the powerful alliance it had formed with the giants. The uprising spread across the known lands, with humanity and giants clashing against custodian forces in battles that scorched the earth. Even with ships in the air and powerful weaponry, the rebellion was crushed as custodians manipulated the environment itself, stirring storms and disasters in their favor. Seeing defeat as inevitable, the giants retreated, slipping north and south through passages beyond the walls. Some humans followed, escaping to lands outside the custodians' reach, a region known as the Ancestral Republic. Shiki's words echoed in William's mind. Those who fled the custodial grip began again. They connected with the source, rediscovering humanity's true past and purpose, vowing to free those left behind. Butler confirmed that the giants would not join their cause again. The last battle had cost them dearly, and they feared annihilation if they defied the custodians once more. As they prepared to leave, Butler warned William of the risk. Imagine returning to the known lands with this knowledge. They'd label you insane or worse. The custodians had perfected control, using the Greys to monitor minds, turning questioners into outcasts or prisoners. They departed, the weight of humanity's lost history with them. The night passed in strange silence, the air heavy with the weight of what William had learned from Shiki's book. The revelations, this idea that every human held a piece of the source, tied him to the countless souls lost in past resets, a lineage of lives erased and manipulated by the custodians. Morning brought a soft rain as their ship neared land, a gentle reminder of life as they glimpsed the sprawling city of El Arca on the horizon. The city's lights, glittering beneath a soft grey sky, promised a life beyond control, a place of peace and simplicity, untouched by custodian rule. Here, it seemed, humanity could live freely, without fear, pain, or the scars of exploitation. Yet William's heart sank with the bitter knowledge that those he'd left behind could never know this world. The captain encouraged them to explore, mentioning that currency held no value here. The Republic operated on a system beyond gold or wealth. As the others ventured into the city, William wandered alone, lost in thought under the pouring rain. He felt hollow, wondering how he could carry the weight of what he'd learned back to those still trapped within the custodian's grasp. Time drifted by, and the streets filled with the soft hum of voices and the music that spilled gently from the walls. People glanced at him with curious expressions, his foreign clothes a stark contrast to their sleek attire. One man tried to speak to him, but William, understanding nothing, could only murmur, "File," and follow the man's silent gesture toward a nearby building. By the time he returned to the port, he felt overwhelmed by both the wonders of this world and the pain of leaving others behind in ignorance. Butler arrived in a sleek vehicle, gesturing for him to get in, his face a rare glimmer of optimism. "We haven't secured direct help from the Anakim," Butler explained. "They fear risking their race again, but I think they'll aid us in time. Our recent battle has shown the custodians that the Republic's technology is very much alive. They came expecting easy victory, but we've made them retreat with a fear they won't forget." William nodded, a flicker of hope rising as Butler spoke. There was still a chance, but any step forward would require careful planning. With the Republic's advances and allies, perhaps there could be hope for those left behind. Butler's voice was steady as he addressed the group on the boat, his words carrying the weight of what they had learned. "This is our chance to change history," he announced, holding up a toast to their journey. Around him, faces brightened with the rare hope of an impending purpose, though William's heart remained heavy. He couldn't shake the questions that haunted him. Could they ever truly break free from the custodian's control? And if so, how many years within the ice walls would pass before any of it mattered? Sensing William's unease, Butler clapped him on the shoulder. "We'll do more for them from here," he said quietly, "than we could by going back to become easy prey for the custodians." The captain had been gathering resources, books on the language and workings of the Republic, knowing they would need every advantage to face what lay ahead. As days turned to years, William found himself immersed in this strange, timeless place, where the passage of time itself seemed slower, almost surreal. As his understanding of the Republic deepened, so did his influence. Eventually, he was appointed commander-in-chief of their naval force. Now he worked with others to devise ways of striking at the custodians, carefully, without risking the lives of innocents. Yet their strategies often hit dead ends. The custodians' bases in the known lands moved constantly, concealed by portals and hidden within fortified zones. Worse, the humans within the walls, conditioned for loyalty, would defend these barriers with their lives, unaware that they guarded the prison of their own kind. Meanwhile, William witnessed the Republic's harmonious society, free from material greed and devoid of crime. Leaders here did not rule for power, but served out of a genuine love for their people. The Republic's citizens valued simplicity, introspection, and spiritual growth. William began to understand the heart of the Republic lay in the concept they called death of the ego, a freedom from the identity traps that so often enslaved the mind. In stark contrast, he knew the known lands were structured to suppress this growth. The custodians had perfected systems to keep humans distracted and disconnected from their true potential. Paper money, national boundaries, even science itself, all twisted into tools to sever humans from their deeper selves, to keep them locked in a reality defined by materialism, consumption, and obedience. Butler voiced what William had come to understand. The true battle would always lie within each human soul, the struggle between love and the empty promises of power. A great dictatorship, born from greed and a lost sense of humanity, seemed inevitable if people could not find a way to value more than just survival. Butler and Fail arrived at dawn, their expressions tense yet resolute. They had crafted a new plan, one that held hope without risking the countless lives of those within and beyond the ice walls. The custodians had invested heavily in technology and weaponry, making them formidable. But their greatest vulnerability, Butler insisted, lay in their complete lack of spiritual understanding. "Intelligent, yes," he said, "but they fear what they can't control. We know they're still rattled by the existence of the ancestral humans and the Anakim, and though they have the firepower, they haven't attacked us in years. Why?" Their meetings stretched for hours, strategizing ways to infiltrate the known lands undetected. They'd learned of a custodial alert system set to detect ancestral presences, creating localized tremors anytime one neared the dome's passages. This seismic watch was precisely why the Republic had refrained from sending more operatives, relying instead on long-term agents embedded within the custodian system. Butler detailed the plan. "We'll attempt to enter via a narrow, overlooked entry, the summer portal. It's believed to bypass their sensors. From there, agents can spread information subtly, mention the Republic, hint at other lands, enough to plant doubt but not trigger alarm." He spoke of the whispers of freedom, a suggestion of hidden truths that might reach those ready to question. But it had to be done delicately. Many, he knew, would dismiss these ideas outright, too deep in the custodians' conditioning. Ironically, this dismissal gave them time to build momentum quietly. They discussed other methods, teaching spiritual techniques that could help humans break through their mental conditioning, methods the ancestors had once used to guide people beyond their controlled reality. Butler was insistent. "Only when enough minds awaken will these walls of ice become visible for what they are." Even so, they acknowledged the danger. Attempts to cross the ice walls could invite swift suppression, likely through fear tactics, or worse, military intervention. One morning, Butler and Fail stepped into the office with a determined air. They'd devised a new plan to reach the humans still trapped under the custodians' control. Direct confrontation was out of the question. It risked everything. The people within the walls, the ancestral humans of the Republic, and even nearby lands. Subtlety was their only chance. The custodians rely on weapons and tactics, Butler began, his voice sharp but steady. But they have weaknesses, like any other race. They've never understood the depths of spiritual strength. As they laid out the plan, it became clear just how meticulous it needed to be. The custodians had a sophisticated surveillance network near the dome entrances, one that detected even a single ancestral presence. This triggered tremors, alerting their forces immediately. It explained why certain areas always seemed to shake, and why sending more people through the known passages was too dangerous. Butler's gaze was steady. But there's one place they don't control completely, the summer portal. If it works, we could slip a few of us through, undetected. Once inside, the mission was to sow seeds of awareness. Subtle mentions of the Republic, hints of lands beyond the ice, whispers of humanity's real past. They didn't need specifics, only the ideas mattered. These fragments would ripple through society, one whisper at a time, until the truth could no longer be contained. They knew many would ignore these quiet revelations, too conditioned by generations of custodial influence. Yet paradoxically, this resistance gave them more time. And with time, they could launch a secondary effort, deep spiritual teachings that would awaken minds and open hearts. When enough humans break free of their conditioning, Butler said, they'll be ready to see what lies beyond the walls. They understood the risk, though. Sooner or later, explorers from the known lands would find these ice barriers, and the custodians wouldn't hesitate to crush any sign of rebellion through fear or force. The summer portal was an unexpected triumph. For years, the custodians remained oblivious to the quiet presence of ancestral teachers entering the known lands. Each teacher worked discreetly, teaching love, empathy, and the true power of the human soul, igniting small sparks of awareness. Yet Fail held strict orders. Butler and the core team were forbidden to enter. If they capture us, he'd warned, they'll use any method to extract our knowledge. One misstep, and the whole plan collapses. The mission was fragile, and when signs of manipulation appeared, teachings twisted for greed, messages distorted, they regrouped, adapting quickly to avoid detection. But Butler knew their tactics couldn't sustain this veil forever. As resistance grew, he planned the next phase carefully. A navigator from our lands will blend into their world, he explained, his voice carrying a solemn weight. He'll tell his story, speak of other lands, and hint at the Republic. They won't see it coming. The team understood. The message would be subtle, mingled with stories of familiar economic and social issues to avoid suspicion. The navigator arrived in the known lands, sharing his tale with those who dared listen. He spoke of strange maps, ancient histories, and even giant humans, just enough to plant curiosity. But soon, the custodians intervened. They altered his accounts, erased the most important details, and confined him, leaving only fragments of the truth behind. He returned to the Republic in haste, carrying warnings of the custodians' growing suspicions. With renewed urgency, the custodians turned to humanity itself, encouraging them to create technology beyond their spiritual readiness. The results were chaotic: wars, plagues, crises, all to distract, to control. Expeditions to Antarctica began, funded by leaders with direct ties to custodial power, while heliocentric teachings in schools cemented their grip. Bases were fortified along the icy ring, exclusion zones expanded, and silence blanketed the truth of the lands beyond. Then came word of Operation High Jump. The custodians had sent a military force, led by a man named Richard Byrd, to confront them directly. Though little news reached the surface world, the Republic knew of Byrd's intentions. The Anakim, committed to peace, tried to negotiate with Byrd's forces just beyond the dome. There, leaders from both sides met, a fragile truce hanging in the air. But Byrd soon revealed his true loyalties, selling secrets of the Anakim's technology to the custodians. Rumors spread that his cooperation had earned him a mission to Mars. Using humans as their foot soldiers, the custodians cleverly forced these ancient humans to confront their own past, without realizing the nature of the real enemy. As the custodians ramped up attacks within their society through disasters and wars, a faint tremor of doubt began to shake the very foundations they'd laid. But those tremors only grew. Ancient secrets, hints of infinite Earth and lands beyond the icy walls, began reaching those few who listened. And as the custodians tightened their grip, the Ancestral Republic prepared for what lay ahead. Their enemy's control was beginning to fray. The awakening, at long last, had begun. The final step loomed ahead, but it relied on one crucial element: the awakening of those trapped under custodial rule. They needed to see beyond their conditioning, to recognize the deception that bound them. Otherwise, any attempt to free them would only confirm their fear, casting their liberators as intruders and themselves as defenders of the very force that kept them enslaved. The custodial system was deeply rooted, ingrained in every aspect of their world. Even the air itself carried pollutants that dulled awareness, making true liberation seem a distant hope. Though resistance brewed in some circles, it wasn't yet strong enough to catalyze the change they needed. But then came the unexpected allies. Various races, sensing the danger and exhaustion of custodial rule, arrived offering their support. Among them, the Pleiadians, a race with advanced technology and spiritual wisdom, were keen to see the source freed and the custodians brought to their knees. The Pleiadians' own system was close to the mysterious lands beyond the second dome, and they had seen custodial tactics firsthand, especially the way they exploited humans and other races as pawns. It was a shared history of suffering that drew them to this alliance. The Pleiadians had nearly been driven to extinction under custodial control, but had miraculously regained their autonomy, becoming a flourishing, free society. Now, alongside their allies, they sought ways to infiltrate the lands where custodial control remained most fierce. Mars had become a staging ground for the custodians and Anunnaki, where multiple races lived under strict control. The human settlers there were part of the new humanity, reshaped after the last reset. Each of them had earned their place on Mars through acts of loyalty to the custodians, often at the expense of their own kind. That forsaken land, tainted by betrayal and bound by oppression, symbolized a cautionary tale for the future. In lands overlooked by custodial interests, life thrived quietly. These uncharted territories, untouched by colonizers, allowed different races to flourish. Over centuries, these areas became havens of peace until the period of the Great Pyramids, when the custodians turned their gaze back toward human lands. They transported humans to distant places, drugged and disoriented, disguising themselves as gods. Osiris, one of their leaders, established a colony in the depths of the abyssal ocean near the islands of Anubis, where he trapped a community of humans. His mission was clear: isolate these people, preventing them from ever discovering the ancient lands of Lemuria and Atlantis, where humanity's true origins lay hidden. The lands, Osiris claimed, bore his name and his influence. He taught the settlers agriculture and ingrained them with the custodial philosophy, all while keeping them under strict control. Being near the Orion Circle helped solidify his authority, especially as the Greys, who then served as an inferior custodial race, ensured compliance. The lands of Orion and the Greys were ruled by a race known as the Greys, beings who thrived in shadowed hostility, building their technology solely for war and domination. These creatures had little purpose beyond colonization, although their reach was limited. The nearby realm of Zeta Reticuli shared a similar history. Both lands early on brought under Anunnaki rule. For the Anunnaki, the Greys were ideal servants, emotionless, efficient, and obedient. The Greys had been sent on countless expeditions, exploring worlds as part of the Anunnaki's relentless search to map Terra Infinite. Their roles spanned reconnaissance, covert operations, and control, from the known lands to colonies on Mars. But in their attempt to control humanity during the Great Tartary era, the Greys failed. Humanity rose up, and vital information on the Great Dome slipped from the Greys' grasp. As a result, tension escalated between them and their custodial overlords. Small battles erupted, inadvertently aiding humanity and the Anakim, just before the custodians reconciled with their ancient allies, the Anunnaki. Some theorized that the Greys were a direct creation of the Anunnaki, an engineered race meant for servitude. Their survival depended on cloning, and their movements held a robotic precision, devoid of any hint of emotion. But the truth was stranger. They originated from the lands of Orion, a dome that the Anunnaki had penetrated and colonized. Despite their scientific prowess, the Greys had nearly been wiped out after their clash with the custodians. To avoid extinction, they resorted to cloning, sustaining themselves in this sterile existence. Their home, Orion, was lush with life, vast forests and fertile lands, teeming with a rich variety of plants and animals. It was one of the most fertile domes known, where life flourished naturally, unlike the barren lands held by the custodians. Ironically, this paradise had been the Anunnaki's first conquest. Over time, the fertile lands were twisted into the breeding grounds of a vast experiment as the custodians and Anunnaki imported other species, treating Orion like a celestial testing ground. Mars, once a spiritual haven, had also fallen under their shadow. The original beings of Mars, proud defenders of their homeland, fought to the end. Better death than servitude, the last Martian is said to have thought, as they chose self-annihilation over a life under colonization. The Anunnaki, unburdened by regret, took Mars as a second home. And soon, with the treaty between the custodians and Anunnaki in place, Mars became yet another testing ground where beings from countless races mingled and clashed. The first human colony on Mars was established in a region known as Area, where the fertile soil promised a new start. But peace was brief. Soon humanity was drawn into a series of bitter territorial battles with other races. The custodians and Anunnaki watched with grim satisfaction as Mars became a stage for unending conflict, a twisted spectacle of violence and struggle. In time, the human settlers were driven from Area to a nearby island, their numbers dwindling. Years later, a new player entered the scene, Richard Byrd. Under orders from his custodial leader, Nimrod, Byrd crossed the South Pole, flanked by US Navy soldiers and powerful figures from secret societies. In crossing, Byrd forged a passage that now bears his name. But it was more than just an expedition. It was another incursion, another attempt to exert custodial control over worlds yet undiscovered. In the heart of Argaea, a gateway to the Anunnaki lands lay hidden. Today, this region flourishes, free from open conflict, a place where humans are occasionally granted entry as a reward for their service to the custodians. Those lucky enough to settle here find their bodies rejuvenated, living longer and healthier lives than they could in the known lands, where the air grows thick with toxins, polluted by the system they serve. One day, William sat on the shore of El Arca, watching the waves roll in and out, his gaze stretching far beyond the horizon. The sea lapped at his feet, cool and steady, grounding him even as his mind drifted back to memories of his homeland. Faces flickered in his mind, loved ones, many long gone, their lives bound to the earth he had left behind. He wondered if they thought him dead, lost to his madness for distant lands. Yet he'd left them a message, a whisper of his true path, so they might know he hadn't simply vanished. He could feel the years pressing against him, the familiar weight of age that should have come years ago. Though he looked no older than 50, there was a creeping weariness within him, an ache that hinted his time was short. Staring into the fading light, he asked himself silently, would I die here, in these beautiful but distant lands? As the sun sank lower, casting the world in hues of red and gold, William lay back on the sand, his body racked by the relentless pain, 1,000 needles piercing his skin. He looked to the sky where the stars appeared like distant companions. How many, he murmured to himself, have died waiting, never knowing what love and peace truly felt like. His voice was lost to the gentle night breeze. Around him, the members of his team had dwindled, each one taken by the pollution they'd carried from within the walls. Just then, Butler approached and laid a hand on William's shoulder, his eyes filled with understanding. "Hold on, William," he murmured, his voice a steady anchor. "Freedom's close now. They're scrambling, desperate. A new pandemic is on the horizon, and they're tightening their grip, but we've prepared for this. Ancestors are entering the known lands daily now, slipping in undetected. We're going to use their own weapons against them. Soon they'll realize, and by then, they'll be too late to stop it." William felt a flicker of hope. "They'll see the truth," Butler continued, his voice unwavering. "They'll see the lies, the control, the poison they've been forced to swallow. And then, we'll show ourselves. With the Anakim watching the walls day and night, we'll be ready. This time can't fail. If it comes to it, we'll get as many out as we can. But you..." He squeezed William's shoulder, eyes locked with a fierce resolve. "You must hold on, old friend. You've waited this long. Resist a bit more, so you can see our people free." William nodded, handing Butler the notes he'd carefully written since leaving the United States. In these pages, he'd captured the journey, the incredible places, the hidden landscapes, the glimpses of true happiness and love. "Let these be my words to those within the walls," he whispered, "a message of hope for those yearning to know the truth." He felt a tremor seize his body, the pain surging again. He lay still, eyes fixed on the vast sky, watching as silver blue ships, the iron blues, cut across the heavens in swift arcs. "Where are you going?" he wondered, as the stars blurred in his vision. "Is it time to awaken them all? Are we ready?" Then a quiet resolve settled within him. The message he would send was simple, steady, pulsing through his mind like a heartbeat. These lands exist. We're here, waiting. The battle is real, and it's within. Resist, and freedom will come. We're waiting to guide you all. Helen Morris was born in the lands behind the ice walls, a place most of us cannot even imagine. Her father, William Morris, was a daring Navy navigator who crossed the ice walls into uncharted lands and uncovered truths that humanity was never meant to know. Now, Helen steps forward to reveal the secrets her father died to protect. The existence of extraterrestrial civilizations, humanity's lost history before the last reset, and the custodians, the shadowy rulers who have kept humanity in the dark for centuries. At 9:15 a.m., Helen Morris sat in a small grey room, the air heavy with stillness. The room was in the walled lands, a place where humanity had once thrived, but now felt like a shadow of its former self. Helen had returned to the lands of her ancestors, where the weight of history pressed down on her. Her father, William Morris, had always believed in freedom for these lands, and Helen was determined to continue his mission. In the walled lands, life was rigid and controlled. "This cannot be called life," she thought. The land was filled with people who had been manipulated into defending a version of history that wasn't their own. They had forgotten the sacrifices made by those who came before them, people like her father, who had fought to reveal the truth. Helen's father had died trying to expose the custodians, a hidden force that manipulated these lands and buried the true history of humanity. They ruled through division, drawing lines between people based on colors, beliefs, and borders. These divisions had caused countless wars and immeasurable suffering. "The only just cause is freedom," her father had often said, and Helen carried those words with her as a guiding light. The land itself was harsh, filled with dangers that made survival difficult, yet Helen couldn't abandon it. The custodians, also called the Watchers or the Corrupt Brotherhood, are a parasitic force that has exerted its influence since the dawn of humanity. Helen learned much about their control through her father's work and the teachings of Shiki, a giant human who revealed hidden knowledge about the world. This knowledge spoke of other civilizations and the true history of Terra Infinita, lands beyond the known world, hidden behind walls of ice. Helen believed her work was urgent. The custodians had exploited humanity's weaknesses for centuries, using division, media manipulation, and fear to maintain their control. "Living this life seems normal," Helen noted, "but it's a life built on lies." She urged people to question everything they had been taught, to embrace empathy and unity, and to resist the conditioning that had numbed them into complacency. Returning to the lands her father had left during wartime, Helen found them unchanged, still trapped under the custodians' grip. Wars continued, not for freedom, but to perpetuate the division and control the custodians thrived on. Her father's words echoed in her mind. "True security cannot come from governments, leaders, or parties. It's up to us to break free from those who pull the strings from the shadows." The Great Dome is a colossal, mysterious structure that surrounds and encloses 178 worlds, known as circle environments. Each of these worlds is unique, with its own climates, civilizations, and sometimes smaller domes within them. It is said to be the boundary of the known universe, and for centuries, it has been a source of both fascination and fear. Few have seen the Great Dome up close, and those who have attempted to cross it have met with failure. Legends speak of early explorers who tried to reach the other side, only to find the dome impenetrable. Some even claim that the dome can be touched, though no one truly knows its nature. These attempts and their failures have left a lingering fear, particularly among the colonizing civilizations that dominate these worlds. For them, the dome is more than a boundary. It is a barrier protecting their power. The thought of an external force breaking through and disrupting their control keeps them awake at night. Within the dome, travel between the worlds is a challenge. Smaller domes within the circle environments are also difficult to penetrate. Over time, advanced technology was developed to navigate these barriers, but crossing by air remains almost impossible. The safest method has always been through water, where natural passages sometimes open, connecting the inner and outer worlds like fleeting doorways. Portals have enabled some exploration but have also caused chaos. Many portals are unstable, and travelers have vanished after stepping through them. Some believe these people were transported to unknown places, while others think they were destroyed in the process. Despite these risks, efforts to create new portals continue. Independent lands also exist between the circle environments. These neutral zones were once used by early explorers as resting points during long journeys. They are said to connect the worlds, making exploration and escape possible. Many believe that the worlds within the Great Dome were created to be studied, to inspire a drive for freedom, and to eventually lead explorers to the celestial lands, an even greater mystery that lies beyond the dome. The Great Dome looms over these worlds, a constant reminder of their confinement and their potential. It holds secrets, challenges, and perhaps a path to freedom. but crossing it comes at a price few are willing to pay. The custodians are a parasitic race driven by conquest and exploitation. Their technology revolves around attack and defense, and their relentless focus on colonizing and exploiting other lands and the beings they find there has made them a dominant force within the Great Dome. Their origins remain shrouded in mystery, but some theories suggest they are the product of a desperate fusion between their race and another, one that might have come from beyond the dome itself. This merger, it is said, created the formidable beings now known as the custodians. The custodians were among the first to venture beyond their own world, using their advanced technology to expand their reach. They moved from one circle environment to another, overwhelming the fledgling civilizations they encountered. Their power was unmatched, and their influence spread quickly as they explored the edges of the known worlds. However, their dominance has not gone unchallenged. The custodians have been defeated twice in recorded history, each time by a different race. These rare defeats have not diminished their ambition or their thirst for vengeance. If they have not yet tried again, a warning goes, they soon will. They are the only race known to have attempted entry into the celestial lands, a mysterious and sacred place believed to be the origin of humanity. According to legend, every human carries within them the source, or life energy, tied to the celestial lands. This connection is said to make a clash between humans and custodians inevitable. Although the custodians and humanity have clashed before, with the help of the giants, history is likely to repeat itself. Past mistakes cannot be afforded again, as the stakes are higher now than ever. Each reset imposed by the custodians has tightened their grip, making life less free and more controlled with every iteration. The humanity of today bears little resemblance to that of the past. Manipulation and strict control have eroded freedoms with each passing generation. During the Great War, humans and giants united to resist the custodians. While they managed to deliver a devastating blow, including the death of a major custodian leader, the defeat came at a high cost. The custodians enacted a reset, scattering human infants across the lands. Many of these children, under 7 months old, were raised in ignorance of their true history, molded by the custodians' technology to ensure control from the beginning. The Anunnaki are another powerful and feared race, known for their relentless conquests and advanced technology. Towering up to 5 meters tall, with yellow-green, scaly skin and piercing eyes that glow yellow, red, or black, their appearance alone strikes fear into anyone who encounters them. They are master builders, creating massive pyramids in every world they conquer, symbols of their dominance and control. Their technology is far more advanced than any other race in the Great Dome. They use powerful weapons and sophisticated portals to travel between worlds, allowing them to invade and overpower civilizations with ease. This technological edge has made them one of the most dangerous races, even more than the custodians. The Anunnaki and custodians have a complicated history. While the two races share a thirst for power, they have also clashed. In one great conflict, the Anunnaki defeated the custodians. But instead of continuing the fight, they later allied with the custodians. This alliance crushed the hopes of human and giant forces who had been fighting for freedom, leading to their defeat. The lands of the Anunnaki are harsh and unwelcoming. They live in dry, arid regions with little vegetation. One of the most dangerous features of their territory is the waters of Horus, which seem calm and inviting from a distance, but are filled with massive snake-like creatures, some over 55 meters long. These waters act as a deadly barrier, keeping intruders away. The Anunnaki are not just conquerors. They manipulate and shape the societies they dominate. Through myths, art, and false histories, they confuse people about their true past. Often depicted with animal-like heads and humanoid bodies, they have embedded their image into the cultures they control. ensuring their dominance is accepted as natural. Despite their alliance, tension always simmers between the Anunnaki and the custodians. Both races seek total control, and their uneasy truce is built on convenience rather than trust. For now, they share the position of ultimate rulers within the Great Dome, but their rivalry remains a potential weakness. On the other hand, the Venusians were a peaceful people focused on spiritual growth. They didn't build weapons or fortresses, making them seem like easy prey for the custodians, a colonizing force known for their brutality. Confident in their superiority, the custodians arrived on Venus expecting a swift conquest. But as soon as they set foot on the planet, they were met by an unrelenting storm that covered the surface. At first they assumed it was natural, but the storm didn't let up. Days turned to weeks, and it became clear that this wasn't ordinary weather. It was a defense. The Venusians had retreated underground into advanced bunkers, equipped with technologies the custodians couldn't understand. Every attempt to breach the bunkers failed. The custodians tried explosives, blockades, and other tactics, but the Venusians had planned for every possibility. Frustration turned to dissent among the custodians, and their forces began to collapse from within. As losses mounted, a custodian leader sought a meeting with a Venusian representative. The details of their conversation remain unknown, but the custodians left soon after, their invasion a complete failure. Venus remained free, its people safe underground, and the custodians learned the cost of underestimating those they sought to dominate. Further away, the Draco lands were home to the Etermines, a race known for their psychic powers and technological brilliance. Before they became the advanced society they are today, the Etermines faced an invasion by the custodians. At the time, they relied on their knowledge of the land and underground tunnels to resist, but the custodians' superior technology eventually overwhelmed them. Despite their defeat, the Etermines rebuilt and turned their lands into a hub of innovation. They formed alliances, including one with the Greys of Orion, and strengthened their defenses. Though they are at peace now, the Etermines have not forgotten the custodians, and may one day seek revenge. Mars tells a darker story. Once a thriving world, its people valued community and spiritual growth over warfare. When the Anunnaki arrived, the Martians fought back with everything they had. But when it became clear they couldn't win, the last Martians made a choice. They would rather die than live as slaves. In a final act of defiance, they ended their own lives, leaving the Anunnaki stunned. Mars was left empty, its civilization wiped out, and the Anunnaki turned it into an experimental zone. Today, it's a place of constant conflict, with different races, including a small human colony, living under the watchful eyes of the custodians and Anunnaki. The Neptunians had a different fate. Their world was harsh, with constant sandstorms and limited resources, but they adapted and built towering cities along their fertile coasts. When the Anunnaki arrived, they pretended to be allies, offering technology in exchange for cooperation. But this was a lie. The Neptunians were betrayed, their resources stolen, and their freedom stripped away. At first, they accepted their defeat, but the Neptunians couldn't be kept down for long. They rebelled, turning Triton into the center of a bloody conflict. The Anunnaki eventually withdrew, leaving Neptune free but scarred. The Uranites, giants with incredible vision, lived in the icy lands of Uranus. They were initially ignored by the custodians, but that changed when vast mineral deposits were discovered beneath their land. The custodians launched a brutal campaign, enslaving the Uranites and leaving their land covered in craters from relentless mining. Confined to a central region called Titania, the Uranites now struggle to survive, their civilization a shadow of what it once was. The lands of Jupiter are vast and diverse, home to numerous territories, each with its own identity and culture. However, Their history is marred by division and conflict, much of it orchestrated by the Anunnaki. Long ago, when the Anunnaki invaded Jupiter, they sowed discord among the native factions, ensuring their dominance by keeping the inhabitants at odds. This strategy led to near-constant warfare among the various groups. At the center of Jupiter's circle environment lies the land of Zeus, the seat of power. The Zeus-born, alongside another dominant group called the Europeans, rule with an iron grip. They manipulate the other territories like Ganymede, Callisto, and Amalthea into fighting one another, keeping them too divided to challenge the central authority. In Metis, an exclusive and secretive area, only the Anunnaki and their allies reside. Here, destructive weapons are developed, reinforcing their dominance. The influence of the Anunnaki is evident everywhere, with pyramids dotting the landscape as symbols of control. These lands, while rich in history, remain plagued by the divisions that were deliberately inflicted upon them. Nearby, the lands of Pegasus tell a story of hope and tragedy. The Lanteans, a race of winged beings, once thrived here, known for their extraordinary metallic wings and peaceful nature. They focused on exploration rather than conquest, a choice that left them vulnerable when the custodians arrived. At first, the Lanteans tried to cooperate, sharing their technology in hopes of coexistence. But the custodians betrayed them, seizing their resources and exploiting their advancements for their own gain. Realizing their mistake too late, the Lanteans fought back. Their rebellion was fierce but ultimately unsuccessful, leading to devastating massacres. Some say the Lanteans were wiped out, while others believe remnants of their kind survive, their stories woven into myths of angelic beings. Farther away in Aldebaran, the Taurians stand as a testament to resilience and transformation. These towering beings, resembling the legendary Minotaur, once had a dark reputation for feeding on human flesh. Over time, however, they evolved into protectors, helping other races escape extinction. Their defiance against the custodians made them enemies of the parasitic rulers of the Great Dome, but their empathy and dedication to life have made them allies to many oppressed species. The Taurians are physically imposing, with their horns often cut in childhood to symbolize maturity. Their past is marked by internal wars, particularly in Aldebaran A, where so much blood was spilled that the area was abandoned out of respect. Today, they live across various worlds, their spiritual growth and technological expertise serving as a beacon of hope. The Saturnians, meanwhile, have never known subjugation. These colossal beings, standing up to 14 meters tall, possess unparalleled psychic abilities and advanced technology. When the Anunnaki attempted to infiltrate their lands, they quickly realized conquest was impossible. Instead, they sought a truce. But the Saturnians, united in their decisions and free from hierarchies, refused to aid the Anunnaki's schemes, especially their plans to penetrate the celestial lands. Saturnians are serene and harmonious, relying on collective decisions to guide their civilization. Their presence has left an indelible mark on the known lands, often misinterpreted as myth due to custodian manipulation. Alongside the Anakim giants, they remain a formidable force against the custodians and Anunnaki. In the Orion lands, the Greys dominate with their unmatched scientific and psychic capabilities. These small beings have been integral to the custodians' efforts to conquer the celestial lands, though their experiments on other races, particularly humans, have earned them a reputation for cruelty. The Greys' lack of empathy is evident in the many harrowing accounts of abductions and genetic tests. Despite their advanced technology, the Greys have suffered defeats. During the time of Tartary, they attempted to control the known lands, but were overthrown by an alliance of giants and humans. Their leader was killed, deepening their hatred for humanity. While they colonized independent lands, they have never been able to dominate a full circle environment on their own. The Pleiadians offer a stark contrast. Tall and ethereal, They are known for their spiritual wisdom and dedication to improving life. Their ancestors fled to the Pleiades after surviving the Battle of Asgard. Though generally benevolent, their early pact with the Anunnaki subjected them to manipulation, leading to periodic disasters in their homeland. While they occasionally visited the known lands, they often struggled to coexist with humans and preferred isolation. The lands of the clones are a grim reminder of experimentation gone awry. Initially created by the Anunnaki as a testing ground, this circle environment became a site for cloning. Escaped clones caused chaos, leading to the land's abandonment. Today, it remains a desolate, eerie place, with its laboratories left untouched. Finally, the reptilians, or Lacerta beings, reside in their isolated lands, far from the known lands. They prefer underground cities and maintain a wary distance from other civilizations. Known for their advanced technology and military prowess, they have resisted all attempts at subjugation. While they occasionally engage with the custodians, their true loyalties remain ambiguous. Some speculate they might align with the custodians in future conflicts, though their ultimate intentions are shrouded in mystery. The celestial lands, however, remain a mystery, untouched by the parasitic races that have spread their influence across countless worlds. These hidden lands, inaccessible even to the custodians and Anunnaki, despite their relentless attempts, are said to hold secrets tied deeply to humanity's essence, secrets that remain beyond the reach of any conqueror. Many extraterrestrial worlds exist beyond the celestial lands, each with its unique struggles and stories. Some thrive in peace, untouched by the parasitic races, perhaps because they offered nothing of interest to their would-be oppressors. Others, however, suffered a far worse fate. The parasitic races often invaded developing civilizations, stripping their lands of resources and altering their histories, leaving behind broken worlds and extinguished dreams. Humanity, too, bears the scars of this exploitation. Though physically intact, it has been spiritually fractured, its potential deliberately suppressed. The colonizers' true goal was not mere conquest, but the erosion of humanity's connection to what is called the source of life. This essence is believed to be a unique gift that no other race possesses, a connection to the celestial lands themselves. The source of life is what makes humanity different. It is something that the colonizers have never been able to control or manipulate. Despite their power, they cannot alter this inner truth. This inability has long fueled their fear, as the very existence of this essence poses a threat to their dominance. The physical chains of oppression may weigh heavy, but the spirit remains untouchable. Across the Great Dome, some races have successfully resisted the parasitic forces. They endured, adapted, and in some cases overcame. These examples remind humanity that survival is possible, that there is hope even in the face of overwhelming odds. The celestial lands stand as a symbol of that hope. Untouched and undefiled, they are a testament to the possibility of resistance and renewal. The fact that the parasitic races have been unable to penetrate them despite their best efforts only amplifies their importance. These lands hold the key to understanding what humanity has lost and what it might yet regain. Hidden within their borders may lie the path to freedom, a path that has not yet been forgotten. For now, the celestial lands remain out of reach, but their existence alone is a reminder of the strength that resides within. It is a strength that cannot be taken, only rediscovered. Beyond the known worlds, there are many other places, each with its own story. Some worlds have been lucky, living in peace and growing without trouble. Maybe the colonizers didn't see anything worth taking, or perhaps these worlds developed too late to catch their attention. But not all were so fortunate. Many lands were attacked before they could fully grow, their people left broken, their histories rewritten, and their dreams destroyed. In these lands, the invaders took everything, leaving behind scars and emptiness. Humanity shares this story of loss. Long ago, its place in the world was stolen, and now it struggles to find its way back. The colonizers remain in control, draining humanity's spirit little by little. While people still live, their inner strength, their true power, is fading. The real danger isn't physical destruction. It's the day when no one remembers the potential they hold within to change their world. 3 major colonizing races have kept humanity and many others under their control. They use fear, lies, and manipulation to stay in power. But there is hope. Some races have managed to break free. Their stories offer lessons on how to resist and fight back. Some of these beings are even willing to help humanity find its own strength and freedom. At the heart of it all is a great mystery: the celestial lands. These hidden worlds are untouched by the colonizers. Despite all their advanced technology and power, they have never been able to enter. The celestial lands hold a secret, the source of life. This is something unique to humanity, something the invaders cannot control or destroy. They can change the outside world, but they cannot reach the strength that lies within. William Morris had always been a man driven by curiosity and a refusal to accept the boundaries others imposed. Born in the known lands, he lived under the shadow of towering ice walls and mysterious barriers that seemed to cage humanity, both physically and mentally. These walls were not natural. They were creations of those who sought to confine and control. Yet where others saw obstacles, William saw an invitation. Against all odds, he crossed those ice walls, venturing into the unknown. What he discovered on the other side was more than a new land. It was a revelation. The Ancestral Republic, as it was known, was a place untouched by the forces that dominated his homeland. Here people thrived in freedom, advancing in ways the known lands could only dream of. It was a society built on resilience and knowledge, and it quickly became William's new home. In this land of promise, William met a woman who shared his unyielding spirit. She was native to the Republic, her life shaped by the sacrifices of her ancestors who had fought to preserve their freedom. Together, they built a life filled with purpose and love, and it was in this union that their daughter was born. She was a child of 2 worlds, one of struggle and confinement, the other of hope and boundless possibility. Growing up, the daughter often listened to stories of her parents' lives. From her mother, she learned about the fierce battles waged to protect the Republic, the sacrifices made to ensure its survival. From her father, she heard tales of the known lands, a place filled with untapped potential but shackled by those who sought to suppress it. Her father's courage in crossing the barriers and her mother's determination to honor her ancestors filled her with a sense of destiny. "They gave everything for freedom," her mother would say, her voice both proud and wistful. These words stayed with her, igniting a desire to understand the lands her father had left behind. She dreamed of stepping onto the soil of the known lands, retracing her father's path, and bridging the gap between 2 worlds that had been kept apart for so long. William Morris was not just a man of the sea, but a figure defined by relentless determination and a vision for a freer humanity. At the age of 34, he had already earned his place as a seasoned member of the Continental Navy, but it wasn't his military rank that set him apart. It was his unwavering refusal to accept the status quo. His journey would be shaped by one fateful meeting with a man named Butler, a figure shrouded in secrecy and intrigue. Butler, like William, was no stranger to navigating uncharted waters. He had been born in the Ancestral Republic, a land beyond the ice walls, and was deeply embedded in the struggle to reclaim what humanity had lost. His expertise wasn't limited to maps and compasses. Butler led the Naval Council of the Republic, a position that made him the mastermind behind daring infiltration missions into the known lands. Together, these 2 men forged a plan that would test the limits of courage and strategy. With a team of experienced navigators and warriors, they set their sights on the unthinkable, crossing the polar ice walls that had imprisoned the known lands for generations. This wasn't an act of random bravery. It was a calculated operation. Butler, having traversed these treacherous barriers countless times, became their guide, his intimate knowledge of the path turning the impossible into a reality. For William, the journey was not just a physical crossing, but a profound awakening. The mission was fraught with danger. The walls were more than just physical barriers. They symbolized the grip of a parasitic power that thrived on keeping humanity divided and subdued. Threats loomed at every turn: hostile forces, the harsh environment, and the ever-present risk of discovery. Yet the team pressed on, driven by the belief that the known lands were not meant to remain in chains. Butler and William's partnership was more than a meeting of minds. It was a union of purpose. Butler had visited the known lands more times than history would ever record, infiltrating their depths to prepare for this moment. Together they envisioned a humanity that could break free, one that could challenge its colonizers and reclaim the freedom it had long been denied. While the road ahead was steep, both men knew that waiting for change was not an option. Action was their only course, even if the odds were stacked against them. The mission wasn't just about survival, it was about hope. William and Butler weren't simply fighting to escape the known lands, they were laying the groundwork for something greater, an alternative plan to ensure humanity's survival before the next great reset. It wasn't just a rebellion against the colonizers, it was a race against time to save humanity's essence from being erased once and for all. The near lands, also called the Ancestral Republic, are a place hidden behind ice walls and mountains, home to the survivors of a great war. These people are the descendants of humanity before the last reset, a time when everything familiar was destroyed. Their lands are not only a refuge, but a symbol of resilience and survival. Long ago, their ancestors fled from a terrible war that left them no choice but to escape or perish. Those who survived crossed the barriers and created a new life far from the destruction. These ancestors came from all parts of the known lands, bringing their languages, cultures, and stories with them. Over time, the diverse groups blended into a unified community, forming a unique identity while holding on to the memories of the world they left behind. In the Republic, people still remember the sacrifices that made their survival possible. One story often told is of the giants, beings who helped countless families escape the devastation. Without them, we wouldn't have made it, the elders say. The giants carried children and families to safety, saving lives when all seemed lost. The gratitude for their bravery is passed down through generations. The people of the Republic speak a mix of languages, with their native tongue being most common. Yet they work hard to keep the old languages alive, especially in the smaller communities. The larger cities often lose touch with these roots, but there's a collective effort to maintain the connection to their past. The war that forced their ancestors to flee was devastating. Millions perished, including a young woman's grandfather, who fought bravely until the end. Her mother, just a baby at the time, was carried to safety by her grandmother. Stories like this are told with deep emotion, a reminder of the price paid for their survival. Long ago, when the known lands were still alive with dreams of freedom, an alliance formed between humans and a race often whispered about in myths, the giants. These beings were not the terrifying creatures of folklore, but powerful allies who believed in the potential of humanity. They came from far beyond the barriers of ice and mountains, drawn by the hope that together they could overthrow the oppressive reign of the custodians. At the heart of this alliance was the Great Tartary, a thriving civilization where humans and giants worked side by side. It was a place of innovation, strength, and unity, a testament to what could be achieved when differences were set aside. The Tartary was a beacon of hope, its people daring to dream of a world free from the manipulations of their colonizers. But such defiance could not go unnoticed. The custodians, whose control stretched across the known lands, saw this unity as a direct threat to their dominance. They acted swiftly, not just to dismantle Tartary but to erase it entirely. Maps were redrawn, histories rewritten, and the giants, those noble allies, were recast as villains in the tales that survived. They were painted as enemies of the gods, their true intentions buried beneath layers of deceit. The giants, however, had only ever sought to protect. Their mission was to preserve the spiritual growth of humanity, a potential the custodians feared above all else. For the colonizers, controlling the physical world wasn't enough. They sought to suppress the very essence of human resilience and hope. The battle for freedom came at a great cost. The alliance between giants and humans waged a war like no other, their combined strength shaking the foundations of the custodians' rule. Victory was almost within reach, but the custodians were relentless. In the end, the battlefields of the known lands were left stained with the blood of those who had dared to dream. The oceans that bordered these lands became silent graves for the fallen, a testament to the price of defiance. In the wake of their defeat, the giants disappeared. They retreated into the shadows, choosing to remain hidden rather than risk bringing further harm to humanity. Their retreat was not a sign of surrender, but an act of wisdom. They had seen the consequences of their actions and understood that the time was not yet right for liberation. The Great War began with such speed and ferocity that there was no time for preparation or understanding. The custodians, true to their methods, launched a direct assault on the major cities. Their strategy was calculated and brutal: strike at the heart of power, dismantle the core, and let the rest crumble. The chaos that followed was their weapon, a tactic perfected over countless conquests. Before the war, the giants had warned humanity of the custodians' intentions. They spoke of plans to contaminate the air of this world, a tactic that had been employed on other continents beyond the domes. At the time, little was known about those distant lands or the true extent of custodial greed and hostility. The giants, with their ancient knowledge, brought humanity insight into the custodians' methods, their weaknesses, and their relentless hunger for control. The alliance between humans and giants had transformed the Great Tartary into a beacon of resistance. It was not built overnight. Through meticulously organized plans and unity, Tartary advanced rapidly, creating an unprecedented challenge to custodial rule. Everything moved with the precision of a great clock, a testament to the determination and ingenuity of its people. The giants brought their strength and wisdom, while humans contributed resourcefulness and ambition. Together, they forged a society that the custodians could not ignore. But the custodians, known for their manipulation and cunning, were unwilling to admit the threat posed by Tartary. The walls of ice and other barriers that now divide the world did not exist then. The continents, though slightly altered, were freer and more connected. The custodians used their power to reshape these lands after the war, crafting a new beginning that concealed their near defeat. They twisted the environment and erased the truth, ensuring that no memory of Tartary's defiance would remain. The custodians labeled the giants as barbarians, deriding their strength and unity. Humanity, in turn, became the target of their deepest disdain. The war was not just a battle for territory. It was a war against the very essence of freedom and cooperation. The custodians sought to dismantle the bond between giants and humans, fearing what could be accomplished when two such forces united. Though the custodians ultimately reclaimed their grip on the known lands, the legacy of the Great Tartary and the sacrifices of the giants and humans who fought in its defense remain. Their story, buried beneath layers of lies and manipulation, is a reminder of what was almost achieved, a near victory over an enemy thought to be invincible. Even now, whispers of the Great War and the courage of those who fought in it linger, waiting for the day when humanity might rise again and finish what was started. The fall of the great cities began with an ominous sign, a thick, suffocating black smoke that crept through the streets like a living shadow. It marked the arrival of the custodian's wrath, a calculated retaliation that would dismantle an empire built on hope and unity. This empire, the Great Tartary, had been a beacon of human and giant collaboration, a rare era where knowledge and technology were shared to create a society capable of standing against oppression. The giants had brought humanity tools and ideas beyond anything they had ever imagined. Together, they achieved remarkable progress, using their combined intellect and strength to challenge the dominance of the custodians. But even with their advancements, the Great War came faster than anyone had expected. The Tartary's defenses, though impressive, were no match for the custodians' relentless assault. The custodians aimed straight for the heart of Tartary. Their attacks were ruthless, leaving cities in ruins and morale in tatters. A great flood followed, devastating the lands further. Hope flickered as the Anakim, a faction of giants who had allied with humanity, fought valiantly using their advanced technology. But not all giants stood united. Some, seeing the odds stacked against them, chose not to fight, believing resistance was futile. Despite the divisions, the spirit of resistance burned brightly in Tartary. For a brief, electrifying moment, there was a glimmer of possibility, a chance that they could achieve true freedom. That hope, however, came at a cost. The custodians, weakened by the fierce resistance, retaliated with measures so brutal that the land itself bore the scars. They poisoned the air, altered climates, and erased entire histories. They reshaped the known lands with walls of ice, burying the memory of Tartary beneath layers of manipulation. This war was not just physical, but spiritual. The custodians knew that to truly subjugate humanity, they needed to hollow out its soul. They created a system of control that extended into every facet of life, a system designed to strip people of their ability to question, to hope, to resist. Through propaganda, they rewrote reality, convincing the masses to accept lies as truth. Those who dared to challenge their narrative were ridiculed, ostracized, and silenced. And yet, in the shadows of despair, there remained a flicker of defiance. The giants, though largely defeated, continued to aid humanity in secret. They refused to abandon the fight, driven by the memory of the sacrifices made in Tartary. Their presence was a reminder that not all was lost, that even in the face of overwhelming darkness, there were those who would not yield. The custodians' greatest weapon was not their technology, but their ability to manipulate belief. They turned truth into a lie, and a lie into an unquestionable fact. If the sky were declared pink, the storytellers warned, the world would repeat it until it became law. Few would dare to look up, and fewer still would speak out if they saw otherwise. This chilling reality is why the fight continues. For those who know the truth, the battle is not just for land or power, but for the very essence of humanity. The great cities may have fallen, but their story lives on in those who refuse to let the flame of freedom die. And as long as there are whispers of resistance, the hope for a better future remains. The last reset in the known lands was unlike anything before it, devastating, calculated, and relentless. It marked the end of an era where humans and giants had come tantalizingly close to breaking free from the parasitic oppressors who controlled their world. Victory seemed possible at one point. The giants, with their advanced knowledge and unyielding strength, had joined humanity in their struggle, and for a fleeting moment they held the upper hand. But the tide of war turned, and the fall of the four great centers sealed their fate. The war left unimaginable destruction in its wake. Cities once bustling with life were reduced to ruins, engulfed in flames, or buried in darkness. The custodians, desperate to regain control, unleashed weapons beyond comprehension. There were whispers of technology that could petrify living beings, a cruel echo of atrocities committed in the distant past. Those who survived described a nightmare: homes vanished, loved ones lost, and a flood of mud and water that swept away everything in its path. This flood, now known as the Mud Flood, was no ordinary disaster. It was a deliberate act, a calculated move to reset the world. The custodians had initiated it prematurely, cutting short the development cycle they had imposed on humanity. Normally, resets occurred when a civilization reached a predefined limit of years, a cruel experiment in controlled growth. But the war's intensity forced their hand. Survivors of the reset emerged into a new world, one where remnants of the past were buried beneath layers of manipulation. Monuments and structures from the old world still stood, resilient against time and war, but they became relics of a history rewritten. The custodians mixed truth with lies, creating a narrative so distorted that understanding the true sequence of events became nearly impossible. The reset was brutal. Adults and children over 7 months old were wiped out, their lives erased, as if they had never existed. Only infants, carefully chosen by the custodians, were spared. These young survivors were left to grow in a world engineered to stifle their spiritual and intellectual growth. The custodians controlled every aspect of this environment, ensuring that humanity never again came close to understanding its true potential or breaking free. The giants' intervention had been a turning point, a moment when the veil of ignorance was lifted. They shared knowledge of the lands beyond, of life beyond the dome, and of the truth behind the manipulation. But this knowledge made humanity dangerous in the eyes of the custodians. The reset wasn't just a punishment, it was a way to silence the awakening. Imagine living in a greenhouse where every aspect of your environment is controlled. The soil can be poisoned or enriched at will, and the light can nurture or destroy. This is the reality of the known lands, a world meticulously shaped by unseen hands. The last reset was a stark reminder of the custodians' power, their fear of losing control, and their willingness to sacrifice entire generations to maintain their dominance. But even in this darkness, traces of the past persist. The monuments and stories of the old world remain, fragments of a forgotten legacy waiting to be rediscovered. The spirit of those who fought for freedom lingers, a quiet but unyielding defiance against the forces that seek to erase them. William Morris could not ignore the anguish that consumed him daily. He had returned to the lands of his birth, a place haunted by the suffering of those he called his brothers. The pain of knowing that countless lives were being lost to war, manipulation, and plague within the known lands was a burden that grew heavier with each passing day. Yet his resolve remained unshaken. He spent his days meticulously planning a way to return and aid those trapped in this living hell. To William, these lands were not just a memory, they were home, filled with people who deserved freedom and truth. However, the world beyond the known lands was not without its own perils. The custodians, restless and vengeful, had begun to extend their reach. Their attacks now targeted lands that had previously remained untouched, silent havens that were now under siege. Among the custodians' most shocking discoveries was a city of giants and giant humans. These beings, labeled as traitors by the custodians, had defied their authority and developed technology that rivaled even the most advanced creations of their oppressors. The custodians launched an assault on the city, but their efforts were in vain. The Anakim, the great allies of these giants, had bolstered their defenses to an unimaginable level. The custodians were expelled, humiliated, and forced to retreat back to the known lands. This defeat left the custodians rattled. They feared losing their grip on the known lands, their prized colony. In a desperate attempt to maintain control, they began reinforcing the walls that separated the known lands from the truth beyond. Advanced technology and military might were deployed to create a seemingly impenetrable barrier. Treaties were signed, and military bases were established throughout the region, all designed to keep the truth hidden from humanity. The custodians, masters of control and manipulation, had long believed their prized colony was impenetrable. Yet beneath their radar, a network of infiltrators had been quietly growing, numbering over 14,000. These were ancestors from the Ancestral Republic, a result of the daring Morris-Butler plan, formed with the collaboration of giant leaders and other races united in their silent fight for humanity's liberation. This intricate operation had one goal: to awaken the oppressed and reveal the truths hidden behind the custodians' veil of lies. For years, these infiltrators worked in secrecy, weaving their influence into key areas: politics, institutions, and even the very organizations the custodians used to maintain control. Each step was delicate, for even a whisper of their presence could trigger catastrophic consequences, possibly even an immediate reset. They walked a razor-thin line, spreading knowledge about humanity's spiritual potential and its forgotten history, while evading the custodians' all-seeing eyes. Infiltrating the known lands was no simple feat. The barriers were fortified with advanced technology, including radars capable of triggering earthquakes, and military bases patrolled the perimeters relentlessly. Yet the infiltrators, with the aid of advanced technology and unparalleled determination, managed to slip through. For a time, their efforts seemed unstoppable. Then came the event that changed everything. Near the Antarctic Peninsula, known to the infiltrators as False Antarctica, a group from the Ancestral Republic encountered a custodian military base while traveling aboard an icebreaker. When the custodian patrol tried to intercept them, the infiltrators sank their ship in a desperate escape attempt. The incident sent shockwaves through the custodian hierarchy. Alarms were raised, and a manhunt of unprecedented scale began. The custodians acted swiftly and brutally. Using this event as an excuse, they launched raids across countless homes and institutions, claiming to root out hidden threats. Advanced surveillance technology, already in place, was fortified to monitor the new humanity's every move. The infiltrators, once operating in the shadows, now faced relentless pursuit. The fallout was devastating. Many of the 14,000 infiltrators were forced to retreat, their mission compromised. Some were captured and met with unspeakable torture, punished as traitors to the custodial regime. Their sacrifices weighed heavily on those who remained, a grim reminder of the risks they had taken for the hope of freedom. Among those who returned was Captain Butler. The death of William Morris marked one of the darkest moments in the struggle for humanity's liberation. It was a day that etched itself into the hearts of those who fought alongside him. Butler, a man hardened by war but broken by loss, approached Helen and her mother with a limp, his wounds evident in both body and spirit. Every step he took toward them felt like an eternity, and when he finally reached them, he could no longer contain his grief. Tears filled his eyes as he delivered the news that no one wanted to hear. William Morris had fallen. He had died near the Antarctic zone, a victim of the custodians' desperation. In their panic to maintain control, the custodians had distributed advanced technology to certain human leaders within the known lands. Technology that even those leaders didn't fully understand. The custodians, seasoned in war but blinded by fear, had underestimated the dangers of their actions. This decision put their own colony at risk, as they armed a population that could barely wield such power responsibly. The tragedy unfolded during a return mission. William was aboard a ship known as Iron Blue, accompanied by ancestors and newly awakened humans who were attempting to escape the oppressive confines of the known lands. As they crossed the Antarctic skies, their ship disintegrated mid-air. The custodians had created an invisible barrier near the dome, a last-minute defensive measure to block the air route that the ancestors had discovered. The barrier obliterated the Iron Blue, taking William's life along with many others. Butler, who had been traveling in a separate ship, narrowly survived. When he recounted the events, his words painted a picture of chaos and betrayal. The custodians, in their bid to suppress the resistance, had unleashed a storm of destruction that spiraled out of their control. It wasn't just the ancestors and their allies who suffered. The technology they handed over sparked conflict within the known lands, as countries turned these deadly tools on each other. Advanced weapons, climate manipulation, and environmental control became instruments of chaos. Planes, ships, and even people vanished without a trace, disintegrated by forces they couldn't comprehend. For Helen, the loss of her father was a moment of profound despair. Was it all worth it? She questioned. The cause that William had fought for seemed hopeless, a battle against insurmountable odds. But with time, that despair transformed into resolve. They came to understand that William's sacrifice wasn't in vain. His dream of freedom and his unwavering belief in humanity's potential became a beacon of hope for those left behind. The custodians' actions, however, left the known lands in a state of peril. The technology they introduced fueled wars and deepened divisions among the nations. Leaders wielded their newfound power recklessly, threatening global destruction through biological weapons and other catastrophic means. The custodians themselves feared that humanity might turn this technology against them, though such a scenario seemed far removed from reality. The more immediate threat was the prospect of another reset, a complete erasure of humanity's progress, initiated out of the custodians' fear of losing control. The fight for humanity's liberation has not ended. In fact, it has only grown stronger, fueled by the sacrifices of those who have come before. William Morris's death, though a devastating loss, ignited a deeper resolve within the Republic. He had been a symbol of hope, a bridge between the known lands and those yearning for freedom. His memory strengthened the resolve of those who remained steadfast against the custodians' relentless grip. The plan, while delayed, was never abandoned. Progress takes time, especially when the true battle lies not just in the physical world, but within the human mind. The custodians' greatest weapon is psychological control, a ceaseless barrage of thoughts, fears, and divisions implanted to keep humanity fragmented. These voices, the doubts, insecurities, and endless competition, are their tools of oppression, designed to wear people down and stifle their spiritual potential. Yet humanity endures, proving its resilience in the face of unimaginable adversity. The path forward requires a profound shift. Humanity must learn to silence these intrusive thoughts, to reconnect with the innate strength that has kept it standing despite generations of manipulation. The key lies in teaching future generations their true potential, shielding children from the distractions and divisions the custodians deploy to mold them into obedient followers. Through media, science, and education, they control the narrative, using trusted figures to ridicule and discredit any who dare to challenge their authority. But the answer is not to reject these systems outright. It is to infiltrate them, to excel within them, and to dismantle the corruption from the inside. The Republic has a different vision, one that fosters genuine scientific advancement and spiritual growth. The ancestral knowledge and the contributions of the giant humans, once hidden or destroyed by the custodians, remain vital to this effort. This lost legacy holds the keys to ending the cycle of control and conditioning. It's a monumental task, but one made possible by humanity's unique essence. As the source of life, humanity carries within it an unparalleled connection to the Great Dome and possibly to other worlds beyond. Other races have defeated the custodians before, proving that liberation is achievable. But humanity's potential is singular, something the custodians fear and cannot fully understand. It is this potential, this connection to the essence of existence, that makes humanity a pivotal force in the struggle for freedom. The Republic and its allies remain vigilant, working in the shadows, alongside those who have awakened to the truth. They stand ready, waiting for the right moment to break the chains of this so-called human farm and transform it into eternal freedom. The journey is long, the struggle immense, but the dream of a liberated humanity burns brighter than ever. Those who fight do so knowing that the seeds of unity and love will one day bloom, ushering in a world free from the grasp of tyranny.